One of Gagne's instructional events is to inform the learners of the objectives. In this session, you're going to learn how to write a performance objective. Performance objectives describe what we want our students to think, feel, or do after completing our instruction. When our students graduate, how do we know what they know? How do we know what they've learned? How do we know what they can do? How can we assure employers that our students have the skills that the employers need? The first step in being able to do all of that is to be able to describe what it is we want our students to be able to do. If we can't describe that, we'll never be able to be sure that they can actually do it. The objective for this session is to write a 3-part performance objective on a topic of your choice. At the end of this session, you're going to write a performance objective that will describe what we should be able to do after you teach your 5-minute lesson based on Gagne's instructional events. So think about it. Have you ever had to write a performance objective? Have you ever looked at those objectives that are on the syllabus that you hand out the first day of class? Have you been involved in outcomes assessment at the college? When you teach, do you inform your learners of the objective of the lesson? Chances are you've said no to at least one of those, but hopefully at the end of this lesson you'll be able to say yes to all of them. A performance objective is just a statement of the desired results of a learning experience in terms of student behavior. A couple of things are very important about that. It's stated in terms of student behavior, not what you as the instructor does. That behavior has to be observable and measurable. You have to be able to see it, and you have to be able to measure it. If you can't see it and you can't measure it, you can't use it as a performance objective. Performance objectives are important because they really clarify what it is you're trying to teach and why. What are the reasons you're covering this material? What is it that students are going to be able to do with the material that they've learned? Performance objectives help us identify what our learning outcomes are. And that allows us to then assess how good of a job we did in meeting those outcomes. Can students actually do what we expect them to be able to do after completing their instruction? Everything that you do in the classroom should go to supporting the students' achievement of those performance objectives. There are many ways to write performance objectives. We're going to use a 3-part method. The 3 parts that we're going to use are conditions, behavior, and degree. The conditions are the given, the conditions under which the performance is measured. What are they given? What do they have with which to demonstrate this performance? The given may be implied, particularly if they have to write a response. The behavior or the performance has to be an action verb. Again, it has to be observable and measurable. By the end of this lesson, you're going to get tired of me saying observable and measurable. That means it has to be an action verb, not a knowing verb. You can't measure knowing. You can't measure understanding. You can't measure comprehension. You have to be able to have some behavior that you can see. If you're being really picky and technical about writing a performance objective, it should only have one verb. However, for our purposes, you can include multiple related verbs, like a series of steps in a procedure, for example. But whether it's one verb or multiple verbs, it has to be observable. The students have to be able to perform that action, you have to be able to observe it, and you have to be able to measure how well they did at it. The last part is the criteria or the degree. This includes things like what the behavior should include, what the product of the behavior should be, what level of performance is acceptable, how good do they have to be at doing this performance in order to be considered acceptable. Let's look at an example. In this case, our performance objective is receive, read, write, and send email to an individual, a group, and a mailing list using an email client of their choice. So at the end of the lesson about email, this is what we expect students to be able to do. Let's look at the parts of that. The given is using an email client of their choice. This would be different if we specified using Lotus Notes, Gmail, AOL, Microsoft Outlook. If we wanted them to use a specific email client, we would have to include that in the performance objective. The performance is receive, read, write, and send email. In this case, the performance has multiple verbs, but they are all related, and notice that they're sequential. They have to be able to receive the email, open it up to read it, write an email, and send it. Writing the email is probably a reply, but it doesn't have to be. So those are the 4 things that we want students to be able to do with email, and those 4 things are all related. And finally, the degree is to an individual, a group, and a mailing list. So that means sending it just to an individual isn't enough. They have to be able to do all 4 of those things to an individual, to a group, and to a mailing list in order to meet the level of performance in the objective. Compare and contrast classical and operant conditioning, giving examples of each. The given is implied in this case, probably in writing. If I wanted students to be able to do this as part of a discussion or a presentation, I should put that in the objective. In this case, the performance is compare and contrast, again, 2 verbs, but related verbs, classical and operant conditioning. It's not enough just to compare them, which is to identify their similarities. I also have to contrast them, identify their differences. And the degree is giving examples of each, so that comparison and contrast must include examples. If it doesn't include examples, they have not met the level of performance expected. Here is the objective for this lesson. Write a 3-part performance objective on a topic of your choice. In this case, the given is a topic of your choice. I'm not giving you a topic on which to write an objective. You get to choose your own topic. The performance is write a performance objective, and the degree is 3-part. I don't want a 4-part objective. I don't want a 5-part objective. I want a 3-part performance objective on the topic of your choice. Is this a good performance objective? I'll give you a few seconds to look at it and see what you think. I think it is. I can identify the given, the performance, and the degree. The given is a performance objective. You're given a performance objective. What you have to do with that is write assessments that measure that performance objective, and the degree is at least 2 different ones. So if I can identify all 3 parts of the objective, and the verb, write, is observable and measurable, it's a good performance objective. About this one, is that a good performance objective? And not so much. I don't know what the given is. That's not necessarily a bad thing. The performances know about alternative grading methods, but can you observe knowing? Can you measure knowing? And the degree isn't there. What do I need to know about alternative grading methods? How many alternative grading methods do I need to know about? All of those things should be in my performance objective. Here's another one. Is this a good performance objective? It may be a long performance objective, but I don't think it's a very good one. Again, there's no given. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I need to know in what context. If it's something other than paper and pencil, I need to know the context, what they're given in order to do what the performance objective says. The performance is apply knowledge to understanding human experiences and perspectives. Can you observe someone applying knowledge? How do they apply the knowledge? Can you observe understanding? What is it they're supposed to understand? How are they supposed to apply what they know to human experiences and perspectives? We don't have that in our performance objective. And the degree includes gender, culture, history, and other factors. What other factors? If it's so open-ended, it could be anything. Just putting other factors as a catch-all expands that degree to include anything. To come up with better performance objectives, we use something called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a way of classifying performance objectives into different categories. Bloom's taxonomy has 3 domains: the cognitive or thinking domain, the affective or feeling domain, and the psychomotor or doing domain. We're going to focus just on the cognitive domain. Your handout about Bloom's taxonomy verbs includes verbs for the affective and the psychomotor domains as well. You may find those useful when you're writing objectives for your own courses, but today we're going to focus on cognitive domain. The cognitive domain in Bloom's original taxonomy includes 6 levels: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Knowledge, comprehension, and application lead from one to the next. You have knowledge level objectives in order to be able to comprehend things. You have to be able to comprehend concepts in order to apply them. Those 3 sequentially then feed into analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Analysis, synthesis, and evaluation are essentially all on one level. Those are considered the higher order categories of objectives. And our goal is to make sure that students are performing at the analysis, synthesis, and evaluation level. Here are some samples of action verbs that you can use to measure knowledge level, comprehension level, application level, etc. So you can measure knowledge, but you have to do it by having students repeat, list, name, cite, define, or tell something. Repeat, list, name, etc. are all observable, measurable behaviors. Knowing is not observable or measurable. Comprehension isn't observable or measurable, but translating, reporting, describing, retelling, explaining, discussing, or summarizing is. When you're looking at Bloom's taxonomy with the action verbs, look for a verb that really describes what it is you want your students to be able to do, and use that verb in your objective along with the given and the degree to describe what it is you want your students to be able to do at the end of your lesson.